Good evening, everyone. We're super excited to bring to you the Cleveland Monsters and the Canton Charge Women in Sports virtual panel. We're excited for everyone to be here today. Our panelists are excited. Our moderator is excited to really just talk to you just about how women really dive deep into the sports industry and how we've just created a platform for ourselves. I'm super excited to round out Women's History Month with an awesome panel here. So I'll go ahead and kick it over to Joanna, who's going to moderate the conversation today.
Thank you, Raven. And you guys may recognize Raven from our last panel. I told her, she said she just wants to be on every panel moving forward. And I said, that's fine, we can do it. So thank you, Raven. And as Raven said, welcome everyone. We're so excited to have you. It was really cool to see the Cavaliers youth group. They started March Out Right with a really great panel, and we're excited to bookend it here tonight with this amazing group of panelists. So tonight is not about me, it's about them. Just a quick announcement, quick kind of ins and outs. We do, if you're watching on YouTube, we do have the chat feature up. So please feel free to submit your questions throughout the night. We're really excited to hear from you. And now to the amazing women I have here today. So we're going to start with Alberta Lee. Alberta is the Vice President of Human Resources with the Cavaliers Operating Company. She's going to introduce herself a little bit.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Raven. It's really nice to be part of, this panel this evening. So I'll continue introducing myself. Alberta Lee. I started with the Cavaliers in October of 2014 was, the time that I was finishing out my hiring process. And I say that because if you think back to our history, 2014 was another big year for our organization. So I started with the organization as a vice president in the area of human resources. So when you think about human resources, just start with humans. So, organizations are built with people, and I've had the privilege through a very long career, working in the space of leading the people function of human resources. I started my career, however, in higher education, and didn't quite see that I would end my career here. And hopefully that'll be the case here in sports and entertainment. But that was my path, and I started in higher education, had a very enjoyable and progressive career in higher ed. But I'm one of those individuals that made a transition, from a very different industry, to this this awesome work of sports and entertainment. So I'll close with that.
Great, thank you, Alberta. We're going to introduce Beth Malafa. Beth is the head of experiential marketing with Under Armour, but although she's out in the Baltimore area, she is a Northeast Ohio native.
Thank you, Joanna and Raven. I too am very excited to be here with everyone. I think that this is so important to have these continued conversations and making sure that we as women can help empower each other to do our best selves and follow our path. I am currently at Under Armour, but I started my career in the football field. I started actually with the Baltimore Ravens. I know that's not always the best thing to say in Ohio. I am a Cleveland native, but started there in the world of broadcasting and events. And then from there, I went to the Cleveland Browns. And the one thing I think is wonderful about sports is while I was there, I got my MBA at night, and I went and worked at Ohio State in the college athletic world. So I think that's one really nice thing. As Alberta came to the Cavs from a different path, I've followed a different path, and it's really, I think, given me the aperture to view things from a lot of different angles, maybe not from the myopic lens. So I'll encourage everyone as you listen tonight to really hear all these women's wonderful stories and make sure that it helps cultivate your path, and then how you can see that you don't necessarily always have to follow a straight line to get where you're at. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to listen to all these wonderful women's stories tonight too.
Yes, definitely. I think each woman on this panel has their own unique story, and that's what makes it so fun to hear and learn about the different ways that we can get into sports and how it may not always be the way you think it's going to be. So next we have Jessica Fisher. She is the Senior Group Manager of Group Events with the Cleveland Monsters.
All right, thanks, Joanna. Thanks, Raven, as well. Like Alberta and Beth both said, very excited to be a part of this panel. So my name is Jessica Fisher. I'm the Senior Manager of Group Events for the Cleveland Monsters. Different from Alberta and Beth, I have actually worked for the same organization my entire career. I grew up in the Pittsburgh area, so I'm not an Ohio native, but I have been here for almost 8 years now. So I grew up in the Pittsburgh area, big Pittsburgh Penguins fan, grew up around the sport of hockey, have a very deep passion for the sport, and knew that was the sport I preferably wanted to get into when I graduated from school. I went to Robert Morris University, studied sport management there, and ended up through different networking, which we'll talk about later, landing a position with the Monsters and Gladiators, who were the arena football team that we had here in Cleveland for several years. And then started in inside sales and really worked my way up, worked into a promotion to a group event specialist where I was focused more specific on group sales. And after a few years, promoted into managing the group sales team. So currently really overseeing our group sales strategy, our group sales team members, and also still selling tickets actively as well. So yeah, that's how I got here.
Love it. Love it. Go Glads, right? Is what we say. Next up, we have Liron Fanan, who is our Director of Player Development with the Canton Charge, and a good friend of mine. So I'll toss it to you, Liron.
Hi, I'm very, very excited to be in this group of inspiring women. And my path actually started in Tel Aviv, Israel, where I'm from. I started working for a basketball team in Israel when I was very young. I was 16, started in ticket sales and marketing and kind of learning my way around. And I was really a big fan of basketball. Come from a basketball family. My brother played, my dad was involved. And just from there, went to New York, was in school in New York, and kind of started, learning a little bit more about the game on the stateside, NBA, scouting, everything around that. And I always had a dream to work in the NBA, but I think Beth said that not everyone has the same path, or not everyone starts what they want. And I got to the NBA pretty late because I did a few other things on the way. I was an agent for 10 years. I worked as an assistant GM for a EuroLeague team before that. So all these adventures and roles got me to where I am today. And the Cavs gave me this opportunity 3 years ago and brought me to Cleveland. And it's been, this year has been, of course, different from the first 2 years, but it's been interesting. So I work with our G League team as Director of Player Development. I also work for the Cavs as a scout, which is very interesting, and I'm growing that role this year. So I hope you just listen and hear from our experiences, and whatever you can take from that would be great.
Awesome. Yeah, Liron spent about 6 weeks or so in a bubble in the offsite in Florida. So it's nice having her back, even though I know she misses the sun, but that's okay. So to round out our panel, we have Lisa Johnson. Lisa is an Emmy Award-winning sports producer and director, and also a faculty member, part-time faculty at Youngstown State.
Hi, everyone. Lisa Johnson here. And I started my career just a little over 30 years ago. When I was in college, I thought I wanted to work at a news station. And then someone who was getting their master's degree also at Kent State was working at the Richfield Coliseum broadcasting Cleveland Cavaliers games. So I said, that sounds cool. Can I come watch you at work? And he said, of course. So I went there, and I never thought about working in news ever again. I fell in love with sports and broadcasting and haven't looked back since. So it's been 30 years of graphics, producing, directing, and now I've kind of circled back. Like one of you said earlier, the path is never exactly how you think it's going to be, but it's even better because all these twists and turns that you don't know and aren't expecting are very exciting and fun. So I'm now living in Pittsburgh. So Jessica, you'll appreciate that. And I spend a lot of time broadcasting Penguins and Pirates games. And the opportunity last year came up for me to teach some classes at Youngstown State University in sports broadcasting. And I can't say no to, exciting new things. So of course I took that on. And then, I was sitting around during the pandemic last year and I thought, well, I should get my master's degree. So I took that on. And so everything was kind of, calm and quiet. And then mid-January hit and like everything, came back all at once. So, so I'm currently doing graphics for Pittsburgh and Pirates and Penguins, because they're both playing now. I'm teaching, I'm getting my master's degree. And then I also edit commercials on the side. So everything's happening all at once, but it's all good. And I can't say no to great opportunities. So here I am.
Yep, crossover season is always fun in sports. So that winter sports ending, spring sports starting, for anyone who has worked at a college, they know that one real well. But so we're going to dive into the questions. You guys, as you've been registering, you've been submitting a lot of questions. So we're really excited to take that in and hear what our panels have to say. So as we mentioned before, we are wrapping up Women's History Month. A lot of you have asked about mentorship and the role of mentorship and the importance of mentorship as we navigate our careers and our lives. And so I'm going to start with Beth and talk about your experiences with mentorship, because I know this is a big part of not only your personal life, but your role in Under Armour and kind of how you interact professionally as well. So just love to hear more about your experiences with mentoring.
Thank you, Joanna. Well, I feel like everyone on here is so accomplished in what they've done, and it's taken, you don't get here by yourself. There's always, whether you need advice, seeking it from a professional who's already in the world, or someone from that's just a trusted friend. The mentorship is, I think, extremely important, and it really helps build your portfolio. So one thing I'm really involved in with Under Armour, I think that Joanne said, is we have a women's resource group that's called WIL. It's called Women Inspiring Leading and Living, and it's the largest employee resource group that Under Armour has. We have over 14,000 employees, but it's global. With this resource group is global, so we have 8 chapters globally, and really it's an opportunity for women to have a voice. And I think that's what's so important is in these times, finding a way to have our voices heard. But whether you have a mentor that's a female or a male, it's important to have males involved in these conversations as well. Because the only way that we continue to build these conversations is through having candid conversations on both ends. I think that by empowering each other, and mentorship is really an opportunity to learn both ways. So not only is the mentor supplying the mentee is an opportunity, but the mentee is really helping, teaching, guide the mentor as well. And I think that I have 2 young daughters, and I'm hopeful that that someone will be there along the path for them to continue to help them and show them a way. We've had amazing women blaze the trails before us, and I know that that through listening to these women, they're going to continue to have these mentors and women that they can look to emulate. So it's a process, but I think that as females, and you need to take that as in a serious way, that position. But yes, I think that it's important for us all to give back, because someone helped us get to these opportunities as well.
Exactly. And I love this idea of your position as a mentor mentee changing throughout your career too, and understand, even in my position now, I've only been out of college for a few years, but I have people from my undergraduate school reaching out to me, which seems terrifying, but that's just kind of how everything ebbs and flows. And Alberta, I'm going to turn it to you, because I know you also talked about not only mentorship professionally, but kind of mentors outside your professional life, which I think is really important, because you said you had a lot of male mentors professionally, but women like your sorority sisters and other groups that you've turned to for mentoring. So I would love if you could kind of talk about some of those experiences.
Most definitely. When Joanna and I were talking, we really were, just really saying, mentors are people that you can just find in so many different places in your life. And, for me, that has been the case. Certainly professionally, I've had people that, I grew to respect them and respect, and in some cases led to me trusting the things that they could, say to me, that they could offer as advice to me, things that I could, have a peek at, them doing that would save me, the heartache of doing something perhaps, harder than it needed to be. So, what that, made me appreciate is mentorship didn't have to be this heavy weight of a signed agreement or contract with somebody. Sometimes it was nothing more than putting yourself in the presence of people that are doing something that you have enough sense to know they're doing it well. And I want to just encourage everybody out there to, first give yourself some credit for knowing, something is good, well, and something's going about itself the right way, that you have enough presence of mind and confidence to, find your way to understanding and seeing that. And then perhaps inviting, that person into your space, whether through a formal conversation about the mentoring or just questions, about, different things that come up. Personally, I've had people, share things with me that are just, it's just brutal honesty, and that can hurt. And then you step back and you realize, boy, I should be thankful and grateful that somebody cared enough, to tell me when I was 27 on a college campus that I was dressing way too old for my age. I shared that with John. I said, somebody actually said that to me and I didn't like it, but I thought about it, and then, something happened and I realized, you know what, they're absolutely right. And they told me, Alberta, you'll have years, to get to that. Right now, be okay with being young, be okay with being fierce, be okay with just being, smart and good at what you're doing. And so that let me know that was somebody that I wanted to hear more from. And so there builds a mentorship, there builds a relationship, that, everybody can have a little bit of benefit from, because, I think that helped, me, but I also think, for those of us that want to be mentors to others, it helps us too. We learning goes both ways. And I think, the relationship that you want to have in a mentorship, yields that kind of, two-way process of the mentor, kind of understanding what the mentee needs, but also the mentee, being in a place to also help the mentor as well. So I hope that is, some pieces in there that some of you that are, on college campuses or just starting your career, just look around. I promise you, if you start looking with an eye to see people, that are doing things that, as you look closer at it, you're like, I like that. I see what they're doing. I may not want to do it exactly the way they're doing, but I like the end result. I like how things are working for them. And at the same time, you're going to see some things that you don't like. So be even smarter about those things. Every mentor is not perfect. So don't let them tell you that they are. So it's important that you keep eyes open and, opportunities sort of open for those things to come into your professional life and your personal life.
It's like you knew what my next question would be in talking about, a lot of people ask about how do you actually connect to the people you're trying from, and how do you connect to the roles that you want? And so, the importance of networking and those kinds of events and experiences and relationships. And so I want to start with Jess and just kind of talk about how you found your job, because I think it's a resource that a lot of people don't know about and aren't really aware of. And so the story of how you kind of found your way to the Monsters, I think, is really powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Joanna. So when I was in school, I went to Robert Morris University, like I mentioned before, studied sport management, but I really had no idea what I wanted to do in the sports industry. And as I, progressed in my college career, the sport management program at RMU is great. The professors really kind of started to, just say, hey, there's a lot of opportunity in ticket sales. If you're looking to get into sports, there's a lot of opportunity there. And it wasn't something I had really taken very seriously until probably my senior year, when I was like, okay, I need a job when I graduate. And so Robert Morris has a really great sport management conference that they host every fall. And I had gone to that for a couple of years, but really took full advantage of it my senior year and just tried to meet and talk to as many of the professionals in the sports industry as I could. They had like pre-conference networking events. So I signed up for all of those just to have a little bit more of an intimate conversation with people versus in that conference setting where there's hundreds of people in the room and it's a little bit harder to get that one-on-one time. But I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with Murray Cohn, who at the time was the vice president of ticket sales for the entire NBA. He's an RMU alumni and comes to the conference every year at RMU. Had a really great conversation, and he kind of took me under his wing a little bit and helped me realize that sales was something that I could be great at. He helped connect me with some of the right people in the industry. He told me about a sports sales workshop that Mount Union hosts each year. I think it's generally in February, but they actually host it in Cleveland at Progressive Field and what was at the time Quicken Loans Arena, back when I went to the workshop. And Murray basically said, you have to go to this. And you're a college student, you don't have a lot of money. I'm like, do I really want to make this trip to Cleveland and go to this workshop? And I said, if he's telling me I need to go to this, then I'm going to go to this. So I went, and again, had the opportunity to meet and talk to and network with a lot of great industry professionals. And with the workshop itself, really got to go through kind of an initial sales training course and go through role playing and go through cold calling. And through that workshop, I actually ended up interviewing with the Monsters and Gladiators. They brought me back to Cleveland for a second interview and then ended up hiring me for an inside sales position. So without those networking experiences and those conferences and those workshops, I probably would not have graduated with a job.
Yes, and just taking advantage of those kinds of things. And I think that's so important to hear. Sometimes it does feel like, oh, another workshop, another conference, do I have to? But that's where you meet people and that's where you make those connections. And so, Liron, I'm going to turn it to you because, as you mentioned, the MBA was always in your mind. That was always your end goal, but you didn't necessarily take the straightest path there. But when you did decide to make that switch from agent to working in the NBA, working with the G League, you mentioned to me you were at Summer League every year, talking to people, talking to as many people as you can. So tell us what that was like and what kind of pushed you to make those connections and use those connections once you were ready to make that transition in your career.
So I think following what Jess said as well, when she said that she was thinking if to go, if to spend that money, in the beginning of my career, when I worked for a team in Europe, but always wanted in the back of my mind the NBA, I said, I have to keep my connections going and learn how to meet more and more people in the NBA. So when one day I want to make that transition, I will be able to. So what I did is I knew some people and I started working as an intern for the NBA Summer League. And my first 2 years I was an intern and I kept coming back, and then I got a role there, and I ended up working in summer leagues for 11 years. And in these 11 years, it wasn't about the money, or it wasn't about, being in Vegas. It was more about being in a place where everyone in the NBA is those 10 days. And then you can approach people, you can talk to people, people see you, they see what you do, and they see you come back every year. So they know that you're doing something right. So when the time came to start looking for a job, I already knew which doors I want to knock on. And also, when I was working in Europe, I would make sure to travel a lot and to be in a lot of arenas, to be around a lot of NBA scouts, to be in all the major events. And sometimes it was hard because it's not cheap. I had a time in Israel where I was working as an agent. I just started working as an agent, but I also worked in another job to make everything happen. And you have to do it if this is what you dream and want to do. You have to put in the grind, and you have to meet as many people as you can, You have to stay in touch with them. You have to know to offer your help when it's needed, and not necessarily because you think you get something out of it, because sometimes that's just what you need to do, and maybe good things will come out of it. But even if not, you know, you helped someone, and it doesn't matter what role he is. And I never looked at that. A lot of my friends today in the NBA, I helped them when they were just interns, whether it was intel on players or scouting or whatever they needed in Europe. And today they're like in high positions in the NBA, and they're in a position to help me even more than I helped them. But I just did it because I loved the game and I love people. And these two combined together, and it's, to me, it seems very simple, but I know it's not. So if you're thinking of, you know, getting into the business, just go to as many sporting events that you can, meet as many as people. And even if you need to start somewhere that you not necessarily think, oh, this is what I want to do, but just having your foot in the door and starting somewhere, that can help you a lot.
I know a lot of people can't see it, but I love seeing on the back end, everyone's heads just nodding, you know, comments of, I worked summer league for 11 years. If that's not a long game plan, I don't know what is, you know, and just the hustle of working multiple jobs. It's nice to see everyone kind of acknowledge that we've all shared those experiences in that grind. And as we've talked about this idea of getting into sports and how that transition can be scary. And you know, I didn't come from a sports marketing education background. I have a degree in anthropology, which most people haven't even heard of, you know? And so I think a lot of women and even adults, you know, especially career changes and transitioning from fields and feeling like, how can I break in? We've gotten a few of those questions as well from our viewers. And I think as we continue to meet people, network, we find diversity of experience is really important for our industry. It's a very dynamic industry. And so having people who have a diverse background just only helps us. And so Alberta, you are one of those people that made that transition, you know, in your career into sports. And I would love to hear about that experience, because you weren't necessarily, as you said, you didn't necessarily see yourself ending up in sports, but here you are, and just understanding the difference coming from higher ed to sports and what that transition has been like for you.
So making that transition, you know, from higher education into sports was, you know, it was an interesting one. I was told about the position with the Cleveland Cavaliers through some trusted friends and people that I work with and saw every day on campus, and they knew that I was needing to make a transition to the Cleveland area to continue. I've been a trailing spouse, you know, to 3 different cities. And so Cleveland was the next city up for us. And I was always able to find employment with higher education. I made the assumption that I'm going to come to Cleveland and I'll be at Tri-C Community College, or I'll be at Cleveland State or something, you know, period, point blank, that's where I'll go. And someone said, Alberta, the Cavaliers are looking for a vice president of HR. You have to apply for that position. And so I did that. And, you know, the rest, you know, was a process that I had to go through. And I've shared this with a lot of people. There was a complete awareness on my part that, you know, I was, you know, ready to take on a new experience with the new industry. I was ready to do that. And what got me ready to do that was spending some time developing and growing my level of competency, confidence, expertise in the field of HR. And so that comes with time. And I know not everybody is at that same place in their career, but, you know, eventually, you know, at some point you will be, you know, an experienced professional. And so I was at that point. And I say that because, you know, it gave me a strength of confidence that, you know, I believe to this day, you know, helped me to secure the position. You know, they were hiring for a certain level of position, which, you know, meant that they expected somebody to come in, you know, with you know, a book of business and experience behind them. And I was able to do that. But the environment was very different. The environment was a fresh, different look for me that was, you know, different in the sense of pacing. It was different in the sense of what was driving the business. And so what I had to lean on very quickly was remembering this. Alberta, you know this function. You know what to do, you know how to do it. Now what you have to figure out is how and what does that look like in this environment? And one of the things I had to continue to remind myself, and I say this to people all the time, don't ever forget that most of your skills in a professional work environment are transferable in some way. What you have to think about is what are the additional things you need to learn about the new environment, which I had to do is, look, this is event driven. So when people tell you, you know, there's a speed to this game and it's fast, remember that it's there. That's because we're event driven. And there's something always happening in this fabulous building that we work in. But I brought some transferable skills. There were still people doing all of those things. There were people of diverse backgrounds, which I certainly had experience doing that. There were people that were looking to grow and develop and be the best version of themselves. And I had a lot of experience working with people trying to do those things. So it was reminding myself that I was bringing skills that are certainly transferable. If you are doing anything, whether it's working with a club or working, you know, in sports, you know, at the college level, or you're in a career right now, if you're working in a space where you are doing things that are purpose driven, if you're doing things that are, you know, have, you know, a clear, you know, drive about them and have an end in mind, those are transferable skills to sports and entertainment. Those are skills that a lot of you are probably already acquiring in all types of careers that you're doing, you know, because, you know, you have to, you know, work towards results, you know, and that's part of what happens in this industry. So I'd like to think wide when, you know, people come to me through, you know, hey, how do I get into this? I don't have a background in sports management. I never did this. I don't do that. Forget about that. Tell me what you are doing. And let's begin to think about what's transferable in that. Let's begin to pull some of those threads through. You know, do you work, you know, under a bridge all day and never see anybody? That may be a little challenging, but most of us aren't. Most of us are doing things that are very much engaging, are very much built around delivering and working, you know, to some end result. And that gives me a lot of encouragement to just simply tell people, you know, give it a try and see where it can go.
Yes, if I had graphics, I would have transferable skills just dinging in the, you know, because that's kind of exactly what I hope that people learn, you know, especially coming out for young professionals and younger women, this idea of, you know, that transition from college to professional or an early career into a second career. That's where I think it's really important to understand those transferable skills. And that's something, Jess, you and I spoke about when you were coming into sales, especially as you said, you came right out of college, but you had some other extracurricular experiences in college, you know, with your sorority and other stuff. And I won't take all your thunder, but realizing that other things we do in our life can be used to help further our professional life. So Jess, I would just love to hear about that stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, speaking, you know, from someone who this is the only, I guess, career that I've had, you know, I definitely, like I mentioned before, didn't necessarily expect to go into sales when I graduated from college. So when I was a senior and decided that was the path I was going to take, I had to kind of figure out, what have I done during my college career that translates into a sales position? How can I sell myself to these folks that are hiring for these inside sales positions that I'm trying to get into? So I did try to be as involved in college as I possibly could. And for those of you that are still in school, I definitely encourage you to do the same, you know, with clubs, organizations, having a job of some sort, volunteering, interning, whatever you can do and whatever you can get involved in. To use Alberta's word, transferable skills, you're going to pick up skills that are transferable to what you are looking to get into for your career. So for me, a couple of specific examples that I had talked to Joanna about. I was in a sorority when I was at Robert Morris, and I was on the executive council. And, you know, we go through recruitment every year. We recruit new members into our sorority. So I talked about how we grew our sorority from less than 20 women when I was a freshman to having more than 60 women when I was a senior, which was a big growth for a campus like Robert Morris University, to grow that much over the course of 3 or 4 years. So I just talked about some of those different recruitment techniques that we used, and it's a sales process. You're selling your sorority to these women that are looking to join a group and looking to be a part of something, but you're also at the same time evaluating them and making sure that they're a fit for your organization, because it goes both ways. In addition to that, I know a lot of people in college work in the service industry, whether you're a server at a restaurant or a hostess at a restaurant. I was a server all 4 years while I was in college. And again, there's a lot of things that I learned through that experience that I feel like helped me to get my job and also to grow my career in the sales industry. You learn people skills. You have to think quickly on your feet. You have to problem solve. You have to deal with people complaining to you about something that maybe you have no control over. You didn't cook their food, but you're going to be the one that hears about it. So just learning those things and translating that into a sales career, I feel like is really valuable. So think about what you're doing, think about what you're able to do while you are in school and how you can translate those things and really put it into writing on a resume as well. Talk about the numbers, talk about the impact that you made with the different positions and organizations that you were involved with.
Yeah, that's great. Going to do a quick plug again. If anyone has any questions coming in, we do have the chat feature on the YouTube page. So feel free to ask questions. We'll get those at the end. I want to circle back to something Alberta said about us being event driven and the grind of events, because I think that's something, again, everyone just kind of nodded and a little pained. And I know just in speaking to Lisa, talking about how she was, especially working in producing and directing, you were going back and forth between Pittsburgh and Cleveland at first and multiple times a week. But something else we talk about as the diversity of the team behind the team changes as more women, more people of color come in. We've also learned with new media studies about the changing audience or the changing concept of who the sports audience is. And as a producer, you talked about how you guys create the story, you create the narrative in your programs. And so how has that affected how you do your job? Not only the diversity behind, but thinking about the diversity of who's watching now too.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how much technology has advanced broadcasting. And it's amazing that most people, including my teenagers, don't sit down and watch an event on a TV. They walk around with a phone, or they'll just watch the highlights on YouTube or something. But just the number of opportunities that are out there now, that how everything is being broadcast or streamed or available to watch, it creates a whole lot of opportunities. So, young women who are looking for jobs in this, there are so many opportunities at the universities. Like right now I'm teaching at Youngstown State, but I also have done work at Kent State University. And the equipment that they use and the way that they shoot things and edit things and produce things, it's no different than the way we do it on a more professional level. It really isn't. So any experience and practice you can get starting on that small scale, learn, make mistakes, see if it's what you want to do, because I think everybody on the panel has said, you got to love this. These hours aren't great. The pay is not great when you start, and you have to have a passion for it. And eventually it will pay off, because you're going to like your job and enjoy what you're doing and get fulfillment from that. So there are a lot more opportunities now than there used to be. And something else, we as women may produce things differently than a man would. And I think I told you, Joanna, when I would produce pregame shows, I loved talking about, the personal side of the players, some background information, some fun things, not about them being basketball players, but them being a regular person, So my shows had a lot to do with stuff like that. Whereas maybe somebody else would produce a show and theirs was a lot of X's and O's and breaking down plays. that's not, I mean, that's interesting for 5 minutes to me, but I'm not going to watch that for 30 minutes, So I think women can bring a unique perspective to shows like that. And then, it might attract young women and other ladies to watch because they might be more interested in that. So I think we do bring a very unique perspective to sports.
I love you mentioned kind of the more human interest side of sports now too, especially with social media, and we'll get to this a little later, but this idea, players as celebrity and people and not just athletes. And so with Beth and thinking about a brand like Under Armour, you mentioned that, especially when thinking about your campaigns and thinking about your branding, you want to be genuine, you want to be authentic, because the market people know, and also just the rise even of your women's department, your clothing lines, and again, rethinking who is a sport consumer in the world right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I echo all the women's sentiment about how the changing landscape of thing is really interesting, and especially entering into this from an experiential event world in the COVID era. What we've really learned from our world is, and I oversee all of our external global events and all of our internal events, is that we've had a great opportunity through this time to see how these virtual events are really becoming now these hybrid events, even as we start to dip our foot into being in person and in the experiential world. So I think that is a really nice hybrid that we're going to start to see. One of the beautiful things that you mentioned about like the athletes is what consumers are going to see. What we're finding is that they're really wanting to lead with a purpose-led brand. And we have like great examples in that, even with some of our athletes. Stephen Curry is one of our players that we have, and his whole brand that we've relaunched, the Stephen Curry brand, is a purpose-led brand. And so what we first drive from with that is, how are we doing good in the community? How is this laddering up to not even just sales of shoes and shirts, but how are we leaving a legacy and an impact in the community where we're reaching out to? And I think that's a really beautiful thing that sports has. I know that even with our women's world, these virtual events we've had a chance to do and breach into during the COVID era, we've got so many wonderful responses from women saying, I didn't work out. I was afraid to go to gym. I was like shaming because I didn't feel comfortable going to the gym because of men looking at me or comments, or I just didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. But you guys provided me platforms that I could do that. We've had people saying I've lost 60 pounds, or I'm able to play with my kids again, or I feel healthier. So I think that the one thing I want to say is too, the sports world is so vast. Alberta mentioned it, Lisa, everyone's mentioned it on this. And the nice thing is, when you're entering into this, it's wonderful to work for a team. You will start off wondering, be like, you're doing it for the love of it, the long hours where you're doing it. Why am I doing this? Why am I missing all these events and special moments? But it's truly because you love it. And I think that just to keep an open mindset, an open aperture when you're looking at things, because there are a lot of different realms. That's one thing I learned from going from really the football world, where I came from, the Ravens and the Browns in Ohio State, to Under Armour, is like, you think of like insurance companies. If you watch any college sports teams, all states on the back of every upright when they're lifting the net up for a football field. So there's a lot of different avenues you can go into that you can make a mark within the sports world. And I think that there's so many amazing new opportunities with the dip between hybrid, virtual, and experiential live person events. That's going to open up a lot of really interesting worlds, and really taking those transferable skills, like Alberta said, and how can you make your mark? How can you be genuine? Because that's what people are wanting to. They want the genuine, authentic piece. And I think that's a really refreshing way to look at things, instead of just looking at more of the archaic way that we have kind of focused on sport in the past.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to touch on kind of this, again, this concept of a very dynamic field. Sports is an industry that is probably one of the most dynamic professionally, just between technology and the games themselves and marketing and everything. But as we've talked about, this has been quite a year, the last 12 months in sports with the pandemic and everything. Not only did it just kind of shut down our entire industry, but then with the social unrest that we've had just as globally and in our country, and this idea of this changing concept of sports and athletes as a catalyst for social change and social commentary, especially as we think about our own brands and how you enter the workforce, and as you enter careers and talking about to companies, how did they handle the pandemic? What did you do for your employees? Those kinds of questions are gonna come up. And so even in our own industry that you think, oh, it's sports, it's entertainment, it's live events, but it is so not the case anymore. And so I know, Liron, you work with the players, and now players have a voice and players have to market themselves as being part of the community. So how did you navigate that as we've had these changing conversations of what being an athlete really looks like in the community?
So I think there's a difference between obviously the NBA players and the G League players. And I think, the NBA players, you have all the superstars that have their, social media platforms, and they talk a lot in the media, and they have all these opportunities. So they obviously, raise their voice and fight for the things they believe in. And then you have the other players, whether it's the G League players or the players that are less known in the NBA, or the young players, and they don't think that their voice is important as the superstars. And I think one of the biggest things I try to explain them is that it's not true, because these guys, first of all, they all have their own stories. So the first thing I try to do is, in kind of an organic way, get to know them and get to know each one's story and where he comes from and what's his community like. And then I try to explain them that even though they don't have this vast social media and vast following and all these people around them, they still have their own voices in their own communities. And in their own communities, they are heroes, and they reach somewhere that other people didn't. And people look at them and admire them for that. And they're athletes. So they can go back to their communities and make an impact in their communities, no matter how big or small they are. And the fact that they suddenly start to understand that they have a voice in their own community, whether it's on the matter of voting, whether it's on the matter of all the social justice that's going around, and whatever small thing they can do to help, that's huge, basically. And the fact that they are athletes and they are leaders in their own communities, this is where they should put, their emphasis on. And this is my major thing to our G League guys or players that don't feel that their voices can be heard. Obviously, you deal with a lot of personalities. So not everyone is going to go and be a voice in their community, but the ones that you acknowledge and kind of pinpoint and know that they can do that, these are the ones that you try to, inspire and help them do what they need to do in their communities. I think, we saw the players do a lot, the female players and the male players do a lot this summer, and impacting on voting and impacting on, on helping certain communities. And I think it's the first time we really see them helping change. And that's huge in my mind.
Yeah, just kind of that whole that group effort. It's not just individuals throughout time, but it's really teams making statements, organizations. And that's, as a Cavaliers organization, we've come together to discuss what's going on. And it's really led by our team members too, which I think is so important. And understanding, again, yes, I'm not on the court, but I have a voice in this organization, and I have that my organization cares about me and can make a statement and take a stand on something, I think is really important. And Beth, I know you talked about the letter to Baltimore line that Under Armour did, and how it was started by your African-American employee resource group. And so I would love to just hear more about that. And again, that importance of being vocal within your organization and being in an organization that values those voices.
Yeah, thank you. I, like Liron, think it's so amazing what we can do when we all come together and have a chance to hear our voice up. And we've had a lot of the social injustices here within Baltimore. And one of the great things, and actually someone who I've traveled around the world with quite is one of our photographers, Devin Allen. And he actually, what we did is partnered with him. He is from Baltimore, and he actually has been on the cover of Time magazine twice with his photography, and really captures a lot of what those unrests have been within the Baltimore community. And we partnered and actually made a whole product line, the Devin Allen collection, that led to us, we called it a letter to Baltimore, and just letting people know that as a community, we really have banded together and trying to build on and bridge some of these social injustices. And as an organization, as a brand, it's the forthright. We're a purpose-led brand, and so it's at the forthright of our ethos and our mission. And so it's been so amazing to see people wearing this collection, and then the proceeds from all the collections are going back to programs within the community of Baltimore that are helping in these areas and where we've targeted. We've found that through sport, that there's so many more advancements for people's successes, for moving up, both male and female. And a lot of times at the age of 13, there's been a drop off of people not participating in sport. So one of our goals and missions as a brand is to continue that, to continue to provide resources so kids can play in sport as they advance. There's leadership, teamwork, so many skills that kids learn from continuing to play in sport. So all the proceeds from this collection have been gone to help continue to build these resources and provide opportunities for kids to play and to continue to develop these valuable life lessons that they're going to carry throughout their life. So to me, I find it super important, and I hold very close to my heart that as a brand, the purpose led is something that is really important to us, and continuing to walk the talk and not just talking the talk. And that's something that we're really doing. And it's been exciting to see that collection was so well received.
Yeah, and as you said, it's really this dynamic thing, and your brands change, your roles change and everything. And so, as I kind of hinted earlier, I think I would imagine in Lisa's world, there's been so much change media-wise, just how games are broadcast, access to media, access to all that. And we talk about the importance of continued education. And I think you're, pinnacle example of that. As you said, you're going back for your master's now and all that, those kinds of things. And so how has the dynamic aspect of your field helped with your continued learning, and now especially going on to your master's and teaching and all those aspects of it?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever stopped learning, because as technology changes in the broadcast world, where equipment's always getting changed out or updated, and I have to keep up that way. And it's good. I'm glad that I'm able to do that. And then during the pandemic, we had to change the way we broadcast events. Even we're doing the Major League Baseball opening day on Thursday. So the Pirates are in Chicago. So typically, we have our producer, director, a couple associate producers and directors, and the talent go to Chicago. They broadcast the game with some Chicago crew. This year, we can't do that. We can't travel all those people. So we're doing everything from Pittsburgh. And it's just amazing, the technology to bring the feed from the game from Chicago to Pittsburgh. We have our announcers in Pittsburgh, just the turnaround of that. And of course, it's not me doing all the behind the scenes stuff. It's really smart engineers, people like DMAC, who's running this meeting, who are able to figure those things out. But I still have to learn my role in how we broadcast in a different way. So it's been exciting. And like I said at the beginning when we were doing our intros, I was home during the pandemic. I was just finishing up teaching my first semester at college. I realized I love this, because I'm, like I said, 30 years in the business. So I'm kind of on my transitioning out almost a little bit. And I loved teaching, and I didn't realize until I started teaching that I really have a lot of stories to share with these students and a lot of experiences that, I just never talked about because there was never reason to, So I loved it so much that I thought, if I get my master's, it will help me to continue teaching. And that can kind of be, as we talked about, our journeys are never a straight line or exactly how we think. And So this teaching has kind of, become very important to me and something I really want to pursue more. So yeah, I decided to get my master's degree, and going back to school, it's all online. So, but I did kind of meet a group of students, and we, text, and we would sometimes study together and stuff. And then I'd be like, oh gosh, I'm like the old lady in this group. These are like college age kids, and they're like, oh, whose mom's on our FaceTime call? But I love it. I love learning new stuff. I feel like it's a good example for my teenage kids, who will be starting college before long, that they see their mom sitting at the dining room table for 8 hours a day studying, So I love it. There are days that, are exhausting, but in the end, it's really fulfilling, and I'm enjoying it a lot.
Yeah. And I know it is a kind of an odd concept, right? The idea of going back to school and everything. So definitely kudos for you. Cause I just see high schoolers on the street and I feel old. So I can't even imagine, going back and being in class with them. And Alberta, you and I talked about too, education, lifelong education is being a very big part of not only your life, but your family, and again, how you approach everything. And so I think, again, to reemphasize that we're always learning in our positions and we're always learning in our roles. And so just why lifelong education is so important to you.
Yeah, we did talk about that. And, I shared that I went the very traditional route of getting an undergraduate degree and a master's degree. So Lisa, kudos to you and stay that course. And, we need great teachers, and you already are one. So, kudos and congratulations to you on all of that. We're always learning. And I believe that firmly. I think there's so many opportunities, to engage yourself and be a student. Pick up a book, read a book, watch something. I was talking to somebody, and, I thought we were going to talk about all the exciting, good things that I could binge watch on Netflix. And instead she talked about, something that she was watching that was very historically, factual and everything. And I thought, oh my goodness, let me watch that. And so I share that just as a small example, because there's so many things around us today with all of the technologies that you can, submit yourself to. And by doing that, you may actually learn something along the way. And I think, we all have a responsibility to do that, because, everybody's journey is just that, everybody's journey. But, each journey can be enriched and challenged and broadened, if you, kind of commit yourself, to the fact that we don't know everything. There's something out there, we can learn. I was telling my sons, I said, we're going to look back on 2020 and somebody's going to say, when did you learn how to do that? Or how did you learn how to do that? And you're going to say, well, in 2020, there was a pandemic and I had all kinds of time. And so I learned how to do such and such, I learned how to grow sunflower seeds, which I did, last summer. So the point of that is, learning is something that we shouldn't fear. Learning is something that doesn't have to feel heavy. Learning is something that's just as easy as waking up and, just watching something or hearing, Savannah Guthrie say something, and it inspires you to go read about it. It inspires you to want to try it. It inspires you to go read something more about that author. Or this month, it inspires you to see something an amazing woman has done, and you realize just how much of a student she was and how much of a trailblazer she was and a pioneer she was. And it started with her yearning to maybe learn how to do something that was never done before, and learning that, hey, if I keep at it and keep asking questions and then go here and there and put all those things together, I may be the first one, to actually, do something that, that is amazing and actually can, help some people along the way too. So, learning is just something that, I think we all can develop a bit of a passion. And once that happens, you'll find your path, to continue your lifelong, learning journey and experience.
Yes. I know we have a lot of artisan bread makers now from this pandemic.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
My friend makes a weekly sourdough loaf, which sounds like she's living her best life. So I definitely agree on all of that. And I think it's a really important thing, again, learning about things that aren't necessarily related to our career or other things, and having passions. And that's something a lot of our viewers asked about, is what are your passions in life, or what drives you? And so I know it's kind of related to work because you were able to incorporate your passion, Jess, into some of a specific Monsters game. But I think that's a really important thing, because you have this part of your life that you're so passionate about, but you actually were able to incorporate that into your job. And so I'm not going to give it away because it's the best thing ever. But so Jess, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a huge dog person, big dog lover. Everyone that knows me knows that. So basically 5 or 6 years ago, I had the opportunity to take over as the lead representative for the Pucks and Paws event that the Monsters host annually, where fans can bring their dogs to the game. So for me, that was like dream come true. Like, okay, I get to work with all these local shelters. I get to work with all these wonderful dog owners and help them have a fun day and bring their dog to a hockey game. It's a very, unique thing that doesn't get to happen all the time. So I've worked with the Cleveland Animal Protective League is sort of our main partner with that event, but some of the other local shelters as well. And was just able to kind of combine those two passions. I'm a strong advocate for adopting dogs. I have one and she's right next to me right now begging for attention. She actually came from the Cleveland APL, and it was a big part of the partnership that we have with them, and the relationships that I built with the APL through the Pucks and Paws event that we host. Personal, funny stories. So we were actually, the Monsters front office staff was actually volunteering at the Animal Protective League, answering phones for their telethon. And they had these 11-week-old puppies that were kind of being passed around that needed homes. And I fell in love with one, and I left the telethon with a puppy. But I wouldn't have gotten her if not for the relationship that I had with the directors there at the Animal Protective League, because they kind of bent the rules for me and held her long enough for my husband to come meet her and give me the okay to bring her home. So, you never know what your connections can do for you. They can end up granting you a pet who she's quite the fun dog. She's 3 now, so she's getting bigger. But yeah, just combining your passions with your career. And I think, for me, just being a dog lover and being an advocate for adopting animals, it's such a rewarding experience to work with these shelters and actually see fans come to the game. The shelters bring out adoptable dogs. They actually bring dogs to the game with them, and we can help those dogs find a home. And the APL actually allows adoptions from the game itself. So to see those dogs leave with their new owners is always an extremely rewarding experience.
So what I'm hearing is I need more volunteering at the Stark Humane Society for our I did one last year, and for some reason they didn't let me take home any dogs. I don't know why, but
you got to try harder next time.
Yeah, I know. I just didn't have the heart behind it. But, talking about passions and outside of work, a lot of questions we get too, especially women in sports or just women professionally, work-life balance, work-life integration. Does it exist? Can we achieve it? How do we get it? And I think especially too, in a lot of the panels and discussions I've heard is that COVID has just really exacerbated that dynamic, understanding women are leaving the workforce more than ever because of family commitments and family pressures and everything. And so this is kind of a more general question to the group now, because we all have families, we all have relationships. And as we said, working in sports is no easy feat. It's understanding. And I guess I'm going to actually turn it to Lisa first, just because I remember you spoke about taking advantage of those kind of off times when you got to spend times with your kids. Like you were able to be the chaperone on school trips because you weren't working during the day and that kind of stuff. And so maybe you can kick us off. And I did just end up directing it to you on that one.
Oh, no, that's good. Yeah, I think, well, in my case, I don't work regular hours. And so, yeah, it's great to have, like, tomorrow, I'm free pretty much all day, and I love that. So yes, I'm carpool driving to baseball tomorrow, and I can do things with the kids or at their schools. And study and I like the different hours, but also I think working makes me more organized. I have to be more organized. I have to be more think about how I'm going to use my time. And it makes me more efficient. When I have absolutely nothing going on, I'm the laziest person in the world. So when I'm busy, it forces me to say, okay, I need to do this now. I need to do this. And then I think I appreciate things more, when I'm super busy and I do have a day off like tomorrow, then I love spending it with my family. And I'm so happy to, be home and take care of things that I need to take care of, because they're not always staring me in the face, So I like to be busy. It makes me a better person at work and a better mom at home, I think.
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to turn it to Beth too, because you and Lisa are similar in that you and your husbands actually work in the same field. And, Beth, you guys work at the same company too. So even, what are your experiences there and dealing with that dynamic? And even, what about the fact, your husband and wife, and how do you approach the job differently? Are you approached differently with certain things? And just those, I think that's just so enlightening to be able to have that experience together.
Yeah. So yes, my husband and I actually worked at the same place twice. We worked at the Browns together, and then we work at Under Armour together. So it is interesting, but I will say, like, when we were at Under Armour, we would travel together. We'd be at the Super Bowl. We'd be at MLB All-Star. We'd be at places. People didn't even know we were married. Like people didn't even know for the longest time we were dating. That's how long, how well we kind of hit it. And I think it was just more the professionalism when we were in the office, and people were like, our desks were 20 feet apart, and they would be like, you guys are together, and we're like married, and they're like, what, you're married? So we went through all of that. My kids are a little bit younger than Lisa's. I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1.5. And I will say that COVID has been up until, it's been a whole year without me traveling. The year before that, I traveled around the world multiple times in a year. And it's been really wonderful because my 1.5-year-old, I've been with her every single day of her life. And to be like with them in these formative years has really been a special part of our opportunity with COVID. Now, I say that with like an asterisk, because being both of the same company, we live in a row home. So we live in the city in Baltimore, and we're in a row home. So we're in a small place. You guys can probably see the balloons in the background. We don't have a lot of space here. So, we've learned is we've had to we very similar to Lisa, we organize our calendars. Like, all right, you have a conference call at this time. All right, I've got a conference call at this time. All right, you can take the kids for a walk, and because they're not to the age where they're self-sufficient on their own. And so we need to make sure that we have an eye on one of them, because I think she's going to be a parkour champion. She's up on top of the couch jumping off things, and she's a 1.5 years. And so we call her like parkour, but I think it's been really amazing to have these opportunities to see them grow, spend time with them, but then also for them, to Lisa's point, like for them to see it's okay. Like my husband, you may have seen him walking around a couple of times in the background. He's like, mommy's on a call, mommy's working. And to let them see women can have these opportunities, mommy, and I've read a lot of the mommy parent things, like, don't say I have to get on a work call. I get to get on a work call. And let me tell you who we're talking to. And she's talked to China and Japan and all over. And so it's giving them I think, an opportunity to see that women and men, like their father too, have these roles, but it's another learning experience for them. It's like, okay, let's look on the map. Where are we talking today? Okay, we're talking to Germany, and we're talking to Japan, and we talk about those countries and different things that are happening there. So it's been a really wonderful opportunity. I too, like Alberta and Lisa, Lisa said she's if she's not busy, she's lazy. I doubt that from everything. It sounds like she's got going on with her degrees and all her teaching and stuff. But my mom was an educator. So I believe that you can learn in lots of different ways. And the way we're helping our children or our family members see a little piece of what we do, especially in the sports world, is really hard for people to understand. Like, what do? You produce events. What does that mean? Where are you going? So I think it's been really nice to have those opportunities to share what we have. and with each other, and to give a chance to let our little ones get a piece of that and a picture into it.
I think that's so important, such a great point, especially, with the pandemic and things going virtual, all of a sudden so many more people are accessible, right? Because most people are just having these virtual meetings. And so, yes, we've made sure with our panel, everyone has a connection to Northeast Ohio, but the reality is, you're in Baltimore, we could, Liron could be in Israel, she could be in Miami, where I know she wants, it could be all those things. And as you said, letting our kids see us in these roles and everything, because representation is so important, and that visibility of being, for a young girl or anyone to be able to look at someone and say, oh, that person looks like me and they're doing that. And I know, Liron, you talked about that, especially as a sports agent and that transition, because you did not come out going, oh yeah, I'm going to be a sports agent and it's going to be great. But you said that you didn't really have people that you could look up to that were women in that field. And so, how does it feel for you now? Because even though now you're transitioned out of being a sports agent, your business is still running with your previous business partner. And how have you seen that even world change a little bit too?
Yeah, well, when I started, really, I didn't have, I was working for a basketball team in basketball operations role, high level basketball operations role with the EuroLeague team. So I was the only woman in EuroLeague that was doing that as well. So I didn't really have anyone to look up to. I did have some people I was talking to in the NBA and kind of just learning from them and getting ideas, like very powerful, strong women in the seniority level in the NBA, and they helped me a lot. But then when I kind of transitioned to being an agent, I was suddenly like in a very man-dominated world. I remember other agents and players looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, what are you doing here? This is not the room for you. And me being who I am, when you tell me it's not the room for me, that's exactly where I'm going to be. So, it was kind of like, I had to pave the way on my own, let's say, and kind of like let these guys know that I'm serious and I know what I'm talking about, and I deliver. And basically, when you're an agent, you need to deliver deliver jobs. And I had the network, and I had, I knocked on the right doors and got my guys jobs, and then like that got respected. But you have to put in the work and you have to show it. And I can tell you, you were talking about relationships and our own, passions and what we like to do. That did not exist, unfortunately, in the years that I was an agent, because I just had to put in so much work. I had to be like everything for these guys, especially guys that play overseas. They experience so much. And I couldn't really have time for myself. It was very, very demanding. I do feel that coming here now and, being in an organization that values, first of all, that values women a lot. And, we have the time, and I feel free always to go to my GM and tell him, hey, I need this day off. I need to do this. Because they really support you on this. And they really understand that sometimes you need some time for yourself to rejuvenate and come back even, better and stronger. And that's, and now when we have our little, week off here, week off there, I really take advantage of it, and do what I need to do to come back and be even better.
Yes, we are all big proponents of self-care, the self-care movement. I'm all about it. We did have a question come in from Megan, so I'm just gonna look over here on my other screen. But she asked, in addition to mentorship, what are some other ways that women can support women within our organizations, and maybe thinking outside the box of just traditional mentorship. So I don't know if anyone has any comments or experiences about that. That's how I'll put to the group a little bit. And until I see someone unmute, I will just gracefully fill this airtime so that if anyone, Liron, yeah.
I can start, that's fine. I think, one thing I've been doing a lot in the last few years is, and it's kind of like natural, I try to do it naturally, but if I know, or like teams that have openings, or if I know of special projects in sports that are hiring, and I know people, I would, do the connections And I like to do that and help other women, other young women, get into roles. And it can be like a small role. It can be a month project. It can be a year role. It doesn't matter. Like, I will knock on doors for other women, or other, I get a lot of people, sending me emails and DMs in the Instagram that they're looking for jobs. And there's a lot of women that they want to break into sports. So I try to help as much as I can. We're in a position where we hear a lot and we see a lot. And whenever I can, I would, knock on doors for other people and try and help. It doesn't always happen, but at least I know I tried and did my best. And, if it happens and I can help one person, that's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has anything else to add, just kind of in their experiences of, Lisa.
Okay, well, I think what you're doing here, Joanna, is fantastic. I invited my students to listen, and if they weren't able to, I will share the video with them, because I don't have a lot of female students. I really don't. And I wish I had more, because there's, no reason why they can't do the jobs that the guys are doing. So you having this, I think, is a great first step. And I welcome more females to ask for help and ask for advice, because and there might even be one listening now. I met a baseball mom who said her high school daughter's interested in sports and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have something you can listen to. She can come to work with me. I'm so desperate to help. I'd love to. So yeah, I hope more young ladies get interested and, go to school for it and take advantage of opportunities. But I think what you're doing is great, Joanna. This is a good way. This is something that we can share with young ladies, and hopefully keep them interested.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, but, obviously appreciate all your help. And because I think that is the point, and that is our goal, right? Is for young women or any age women to understand that you can work in sports if it's something you really want to do, and that there's no right or wrong path. And there's so many opportunities in sports that you may not even think of. So if you love graphics, well, let me tell you, we have a world of graphics for you. But if you love even on our last panel, I thought was so interesting, and this is Beth Worlds too, but Renee Powell talked about, she designed golf, gear for women because there wasn't a ton of that going on. So even if you think, fashion or, music, there's just so many factors that play into it. And so I think that's what's really exciting, is that there's so much opportunity, and Beth said, working kind of outside, thinking about all sponsorships. So working at an organization that works with sports or partners with athletes and teams and those kinds of things. People are asking, I guess, kind of in our post-panel etiquette and everything, connecting on LinkedIn, those kinds of things. I think that's always what's welcome. And, can our viewers use this? And what's a good way? And that's even something a lot of people ask, what's a good way to broach those conversations with someone maybe you saw on a panel or saw a program they're doing? Does anyone have any advice for those kinds of things, and how we can help connect women to other women?
Yeah, I think as far as like making that outreach, just hit on something that you connected with that they said, like something memorable. Don't just reach out and say, hi, great job, like connect with them on something. And it's going to just take you a lot further than just hey, I saw you on the panel. If you can bring up a point that they said that maybe really hit home with you, just to kind of spark a conversation, that would be my recommendation as far as how to make that initial outreach.
I don't know. I saw Liron, if you unmuted, if you want to say anything, or if anyone else had any.
Yeah, I mean, same as Jess said, but also I think it's really important to understand that sometimes people will not answer you right away, and don't get discouraged. Like, people are sometimes busy, things happen in their lives. We're people like everyone else. Like, I'm going to finish this and I'm going to watch 3 games and do scouting till who knows what time in the middle of the night tonight. So it's just like things, it doesn't mean we won't get back to you. Sometimes I know how it is because I was there. I would knock on doors and I would email people, and sometimes I would not get an answer for a week. And then after a week, I get that email and I was so excited. So just, be patient and do it the right way and be respectful of like people's time and just, just keep trying. Don't get discouraged.
Yeah, I think that's a great kind of note to end on of there is a light at the end of the tunnel and these women are the light, like everything you guys have done is just so inspiring. And it's been so fun to just get to know you each individually and also get to connect as a group. I know our favorite game of playing Who Knows Who, so I know Monica's watching for Beth. I'll give Monica a shout, just kind of those networks and everything, because it really makes you understand that there are groups of women supporting women and that's who we want to see. So we don't have any more questions coming in and I know it's getting close to my bedtime and everything, but I want to thank everyone and I know Jess's dog is very needy right now, but I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us tonight for the Charge of Monsters Women in Sports panel. I'm so excited we got to do this again. And I can't wait to do more. I know we have people asking about, being athletic trainers and nutritionists and those kinds of things too. So, or even journalism and all that stuff. So don't worry, I hear you and I see you and we're there. So thank you again. And thank you to our panelists. You guys did an absolutely incredible job, obviously. And I'm so happy we got to spend a nice Tuesday evening with everyone and happy spring, guys. We're almost at the end of this winter. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.